Jake Carter had only wanted to fix a broken engine. He was a young human engineer, working aboard a peaceful research ship called the Horizon Star. Their mission was simple: explore new planets, collect data, and stay out of trouble. But trouble didn't always wait for a fight. Sometimes it wore a golden robe and invited you to a ceremony. The ship had stopped at Varelia, a planet ruled by a proud alien race known for their strong traditions and ancient laws. The Varelians had tall, slim bodies, glowing blue skin, and long white hair that shimmered like starlight. Jake found them strange, but beautiful in their own way. When the captain told Jake to attend a local festival as a guest of honor for fixing the planet's space tower, he thought it would just be a dinner, maybe some weird alien dancing. He had no idea what he was walking into. The event took place in a giant, stone arena filled with colorful lights and cheering aliens. Banners flew in the sky, music echoed, warriors in silver armor stood at attention. At the center of it all was a throne. On it sat a young woman. Jake noticed her right away. She looked proud, but tired. Her long hair flowed down her shoulders, and her silver gown sparkled. She didn't stand. Instead, she sat in a hovering chair that gently floated above the ground. Her legs, thin and stiff, didn't move. "Who's that?" Jake whispered to the alien guide beside him. "That is Princess Revessa," the guide said with a slight bow. "Daughter of the High Queen. This is her trial of choice." Jake blinked. Trial of what? But before he got an answer, trumpets sounded. A line of alien warriors stepped forward, each dressed in elegant robes. They bowed, gave long speeches, and performed complicated hand gestures. Jake tried to watch politely, but didn't understand a thing. Then it was his turn. The human engineer may now approach. The announcer said loudly. Jake hesitated but stepped forward onto the platform. Everyone stared at him. Some laughed. Others looked shocked. Revessa, sitting quietly on her throne, raised an eyebrow. Jake stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do. He remembered how Varelians often bowed with one hand across the chest. He had seen the others do it, so, to show respect, he copied it. He placed one hand on his chest, the other on his knee, and bowed deeply to the princess. The crowd gasped. The music stopped. Ravis's eyes widened. Jake looked up, confused. Did I do it wrong? An elder alien stepped forward. "Human Jake Carter, by performing the sacred vow of union, you have offered your hand in royal marriage to Princess Revessa of House Valzin." Jake's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? No, I was just being polite." Another elder turned to Revessa. "Princess, do you accept the human's offer?" The arena held its breath. Revessa stared at Jake, then let out a slow, tired breath. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I accept." Later, in a quiet chamber filled with purple curtains and glowing crystals, Jake paced back and forth. "This has to be a joke," he muttered. "I didn't mean to marry anyone. I was just bowing." Revessa sat nearby, watching him with amusement. "You performed the ritual of Vader, the vow of bonding. It is only used in marriage proposals." Jake stopped pacing. "Well, maybe. Someone should have told me that." She tilted her head. "Did you not read the guest instructions?" Jake turned red. Eyes skimmed them. Revessa smirked. "Then this is your mistake. But an interesting one." He sighed. "Look, I'm just an engineer. I'm not a prince. I'm not even important. I didn't mean to get married. Can't. We just cancel it." Her smile faded. "You could leave, but I cannot." Looked at her confused. She continued, her voice softer now. "Varelian law is clear. A princess may only choose once. If I refuse you now, I may never choose again. I will remain alone forever." Jake sat down slowly. That's awful." She shrugged. "Tradition? Our people value strength. Crippled princess already shames them, choosing a human well. Now they truly have something to gossip about." Jake frowned. "So why accept me? Why not refuse and deal with the backlash?" Looked him in the eye. "'Cause you didn't laugh at me when you saw me. You didn't pity me. You helped me onto that hoverlift earlier. And you looked at me like I was a person, not a broken doll." Jake remembered. Before the ceremony, he had helped a young woman in a floating chair when she dropped a crystal data pad. He hadn't known it was the princess. That was you? He nodded. You acted kindly, not knowing who I was. That means something to me. Even if this marriage was a mistake, I would rather tie myself to kindness than to cruelty. Jake didn't know what to say. Finally he asked, So, what now? Revessa gave a tired smile. Now, husband, we survived the court together. The next day, Jake was fitted with strange clothes and given a golden ring that hummed softly. Ravis's aides explained that he was now royal consort, a title with no power but many eyes watching in the halls of the palace. Nobles sneered behind fans. Whispers followed him. That's the human, they said. The outsider, the accident. Dull noble, Prince Velen, even stepped in. Jake sway. You are not worthy of her, he hissed. This marriage will not last. Jake stared him down. That's not your decision. Velen leaned closer. We'll see about that. That night, Jake sat alone in a stone balcony overlooking the stars. He felt like a fish dropped into an ocean he didn't understand. Fancy robes, strict rules, cold glances. It all felt wrong. But then he heard the sound of a hover chair approaching. Revessa floated beside him, blanket over her lap and a soft light in her hand. She sat silently for a while before speaking. I know this world is strange to you. It's strange to me too, sometimes. Jake chuckled. You were born here. Yes, she said, but I used to fly starships, used to fight in battles. Now I sit and pretend to smile while others decide my fate. He looked at her. Why don't you fight back? I am trying, she whispered. Shh. By choosing. Maybe I've already started. Jake nodded slowly. Then, without thinking, he said, Then I'll try to. Maybe this whole marriage thing was a mistake, but I won't let them push you around. Revessa turned to him, her eyes glowing. Softly in the moonlight. Then we have a deal, husband. He smiled. Yeah, partners. The palace of Varelia was beautiful, but to Jake Carter, it felt like a golden prison. Tall crystal towers touched the sky. Soft light filled every hallway. The air smelled of strange spices and flowers. Servants bowed when he walked past. None of it felt real to him. He missed the smell of metal and grease. He missed the low hum of engines. Most of all, he missed knowing where he stood. Now, he was a royal consort, married to a princess he barely knew. Every noble stared at him, like he was a stain on their perfect silk robes. The palace was full of rules, politics, and secrets, and Jake didn't understand any of them. Each morning, a servant woke him early. Time for your royal lessons, Consort Jake, the servant would say. Jake would groan and get up. Then came hours of boring talks, alien law, court manners, and history lessons. He had to learn how to speak in the royal tongue, how to greet nobles, and even how to sip Varelian tea properly. By noon, he was exhausted. He hadn't even seen Revessa yet. Princess Revessa had her own routine. She spent her time in council meetings, giving orders to her aides and staying away from the court parties. She remained in her hover chair, wearing long robes that hid her legs. Her voice was always calm, her face unreadable. Jake only saw her. During dinners or brief walks in the garden, they spoke little, but something quiet was growing between them. One day, as they sat in the moonlight garden, under glowing trees, Jake broke the silence. You don't talk much. Revessa smiled slightly. There's too much talking already. In this palace, words are like knives. Quiet is safer. Jake tilted his head. Is that how you survived all these years? Yes, she said. And now, I have to survive with a human by my side. Jake laughed. You make it sound like I'm a curse? Revessa looked at him. Not a curse. A mystery. I'm still deciding if that's better or worse. Later that night, Jake explored the palace halls alone. He found a locked room with broken metal parts and old tools scattered across a table. The air smelled like dust and oil. He felt at home here. Whose room is this? He asked a nearby servant. The servant bowed. It was once used by the princess, before the accident. Day nodded slowly. Then he entered. He spent hours cleaning. The space, fixing small machines and setting up the old tools. It felt good to work with his hands again. He found an old hover chair part that looked damaged and started repairing it. The next morning, Revessa rolled into the garden and stopped in surprise. Her hover chair moved faster, smoother, lighter. Jake stood nearby, smiling. I upgraded the engine. Quiet mode still works. I also added better shock pads. Hope that's okay. Revessa looked down, then back at him. You touched my chair. Jake's smile faded. I just thought if you didn't like it, I can undo it. But she raised a hand. It's the first time it moved this smoothly since the war. Paused. Her voice was soft. Thank you. Jake smiled again. You're welcome, princess. Days passed. Jake started to understand more about the palace. He watched how nobles acted, how they smiled while hiding insults, how they laughed while planning schemes. He saw how they looked at Ravissel, like she was weak, broken, no longer useful. One day, he heard two nobles whispering in a garden hallway. She should have chosen Velen, one said. A cripple and a human. A fine joke, said the other. Jake stepped forward, eyes cold. Say that again. The nobles froze. Then they laughed and walked away. But Jake didn't forget. Later, he told Revessa what he heard. She looked down but didn't seem surprised. They've said worse behind my back, she said. Jake clenched his fist. Why don't you say something? Do something. Revessa shook her head. I don't have an army. I don't have legs. All I have is a title and a brain. That's what I use. Jake looked at her seriously. Then use me too. She blinked. What? He said firmly. Use me. I may not be a prince, but I'm not weak. Let me be more than a name on a scroll. Revessa studied him for a long time. Then she nodded. It's very well, consort Jake. Let's begin. From that day, Jake became more than just her husband. He became her partner. He joined her meetings. He asked questions, gave ideas, and fixed broken tech no one else noticed. Some nobles laughed at first, but they stopped when his ideas saved resources or made tasks easier. One day, Jake created a new path system in the palace using floating discs to allow Revessa to move freely between towers without stairs. It looked beautiful and worked smoothly. Revessa rolled onto a floating disc and smiled. Now I feel like a queen again. Jake smiled back. You are. But not everyone was happy. Prince Velen, Raviss's cousin, watched everything from the shadows. He had once hoped to marry her himself and become king. But now a human had stolen that future. At a secret meeting, Velen gathered a group of noble supporters. This marriage is a stain on our bloodline, he growled. He is not one of us. He does not belong. One noble asked, What do you plan to do? Velen's eyes gleamed. I will challenge him. The next day, a messenger arrived at Jake's chamber. A formal challenge has been issued, the messenger said. Prince Velen invokes the law of trial combat between rivals. The winner remains beside the princess. Jake stared. Combat? I'm not a soldier, the messenger shrugged. Law is law. Revessa was furious. He's forcing you into a duel, she said. It's legal, but it's cruel. You could die. Jake sighed. If I back out, you'll lose your title. Our marriage ends. He wins. Jake stood up. Then I'll fight. Revessa grabbed his arm. No, you don't have to. He looked at her. Yes, I do. I said I'd stand with you. This is how I prove it. She looked into his eyes for a long moment. Then she whispered, Then we'll train together. For the next few days, Jake trained hard. Not with swords or lasers. He was no warrior, but with strategy. Revessa helped him learn Varelian duel laws. He studied old fights, found weaknesses, and practiced clever moves with her trusted guards. Revessa taught him alien techniques, how to move, when to dodge, where to strike. Jake wasn't strong, but he was fast, smart, and determined. You learn quickly, she said. One evening, Jake smiled, breathless. I have a good teacher. The day of the duel came. The arena was full once again. This time, no cheering only. Silenced, Jake stood on one side wearing light armor. Velen stood on the other, tall and angry, holding a long blade. Revessa watched from her hoverchair, tense. The fight began. Valan struck fast, strong, but Jake dodged, again and again. Met blade with blade. He used tricks, distractions, and quick thinking. He threw dust into Valen's eyes. He used the sun's light to blind him. He stepped aside when Valen charged and let him fall hard. The crowd gasped. Valen rose, furious, but Jake stood tall. Then, using a law Revessa taught him, Jake shouted, "I invoke the binding step." Valen froze. The rule allowed a fighter to trap the opponent's move if their foot touched sacred ground, which Valen had done. By law, Jake had one. Cheers broke out. Even the elders nodded in approval. The human had outsmarted the warrior prince. It was legal. It was final. Revessa rolled forward, smiling proudly. Jake bowed slightly. "Still think I'm a mistake?" She laughed softly. "You're the best mistake I ever made." After Jake won the duel against Prince Velen, the palace of Varelia felt different. The same nobles who once mocked him now whispered his name with caution. Some even bowed when he walked past. His victory had been clever, legal, and public. Valen's pride had been crushed in front of thousands, but Jake knew the battle was far from over. Revessa seemed more relaxed. She smiled a little more and laughed softly during quiet moments. She even asked Jake to sit beside her in royal meetings. Something never done before for a consort. "You have changed the rules," she told him one night as they walked under the glowing trees. "No one expected a human to win, especially not with brains, not weapons." Jake smiled. "They'll expect more next time." She looked at him seriously. "They already do." Not everyone in the palace was happy with Jake's rising position. Prince Velen stayed silent, but his allies grew louder. Whispers spread through the court. "The human is dangerous. He's changing our traditions. He'll bring ruin." In the shadows, a secret group of nobles began plotting. They believed Varelia needed a strong leader, not a crippled princess and her alien husband. One noble named Lord Maris, known for his hatred of outsiders, began gathering support. "He promised to save Varelia from weakness," said Jake. "Was a symbol of the Empire's fall. We must act," Maris told his followers, "before our bloodline is stained forever." One afternoon, Jake entered the palace workshop where he had fixed Ravis's hoverchair. He was working on a project, special exoframe glove to help her lift heavier tools. It was his way of helping her feel strong again. As he tightened a small screw, he heard soft footsteps. It was Lyra, Ravis's most loyal handmaiden. She was quiet, always watching, always near the princess. She bowed. "Sort, Jake. May I?" "Speak freely." Jake set down his tool. "Of course." She stepped closer. "You are in danger." Jake raised an eyebrow. "More duels?" "Worse," she said. "There are rumors of poison. Secret meetings. Lord Miraz leads them. They want you removed. Or worse." Jake's face grew serious. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the princess has suffered enough," she said. He gave her back her voice. "I won't let them take it again." Jake nodded. "Thank you, Lyra, but I can't just hide. I have to stop them." Jake went straight to Revessa. He found her in the throne chamber, speaking to her guards. When he told her about the threat, she didn't act surprised. "I knew something was coming," she said. "They fear change more than they fear death." Jake frowned. "We have to do something." She nodded. "We will, but not with swords. With proof." Together, they came up with a plan. Jake and Lyra would pretend to leave the palace for a trip to the nearby mountains. Meanwhile, Revessa would secretly gather support from hidden allies inside the court, those who believed in her, those tired of the old ways. Lyra gave Jake a small communication crystal. "Speak into it once a day. That way we'll know you're safe." Jake agreed. The next morning, he left in a simple hover cart, dressed like a common traveler. Only Revessa, Lyra, and 2 guards knew the truth. The mountain path was quiet. But Jake couldn't relax. He kept his hand near a hidden stun baton. His mind was sharp. He knew the nobles might send someone to silence him. On the 3rd night, it happened. As he rested by a rocky stream, 4 cloaked figures appeared. They carried curved blades and wore black robes. Jake stood slowly. "Me guess Mira sent you." One of them laughed. "You're a clever human, but not clever enough." Jake didn't wait. He threw dust into the attacker's eyes and rolled behind a rock. One of his guards fired a stun beam, knocking down an enemy. Another guard was struck and fell. Jake jumped forward, hitting another attacker with the baton. He wasn't a soldier, but he was fast, and he didn't fight fair. After a messy fight, the last enemy ran into the woods. Jake's hands were shaking. He looked at his injured guard. "Get him to the cart. We're going back." By the time they returned to the palace, Jake was angry. He stormed into Ravis's chamber. "They tried to kill me." Ravis's face turned pale. "I'm sorry." "Jake, I didn't think they'd strike so soon. They're cowards." "Hiding behind shadows," Jake said. She took his hand. "Then we bring them into the light." That night, Ravessa called for a private council meeting. Only the highest nobles were allowed to enter the circle chamber. The room had stone pillars and a glass roof showing the stars above. Jake stood beside Ravessa, wearing his formal robe. "Lord." Maraz entered with confidence. He bowed with fake grace. "Princess? Human? What an honor." Ravessa didn't smile. "We are here to discuss loyalty," of course, Maraz said, "something that must be earned." Jake stepped forward. "I was attacked on the mountain road. It's 4 men with curved blades. 1 wore your house colors." The room went silent. Maraz raised an eyebrow. "Accidents happen in the wild." Jake held up a blood-stained piece of cloth. "This came from your private guard." We checked. Ravessa's eyes turned sharp. "Your actions are treason." Maraz laughed. "And who will believe a cripple and a human?" Just then, the chamber doors opened. 3 nobles stepped in, members of the council who had once stayed silent. Behind them were 2 captured attackers, their hands bound. One noble spoke. "We found them hiding near Maraz's estate." They confessed. Raz paled. Ravessa rose from her hover chair using a brace Jake had built for her arm. "Lord Maraz, by the laws of Varelia, you are stripped of title, land, and honor. You will be exiled." Maraz shouted, "This is madness." Jake stepped beside Ravessa. "No, this is justice." The next day, the news spread across the city. A princess had stood against betrayal. A human had helped uncover the truth. The people whispered in amazement. Maybe the human is not so weak. Maybe the princess is still strong.
Avessa
Returned to her workshop and sat beside Jake. He handed her the small exoglove he had finished. "Try this." She slid it onto her hand. The fingers moved with strength. She lifted a metal bar with ease. She looked at him, eyes soft. "You've given me back more than just strength," Jake smiled. "And you've given me something I didn't know I needed." They sat in silence for a while. Then Ravessa whispered, "You were never just a mistake, Jake. Not to me," smiled. "And you were never just a title." But far beyond the palace, in a dark part of space, a different enemy was watching. Broken empire that once fought Varelia was rising again. They had heard of the crippled princess and her alien husband. They had seen the weakness in the past. Now they prepared to strike. Varelia would soon face a greater danger than politics or pride, and Jake and Ravessa would have to stand together stronger than ever. The stars above Varelia had always been a silent witness to its history, glory, wars, and peace. But tonight, they watched something new unfold. An enemy fleet had been detected near the planet's orbit. Old enemies. Ones thought defeated long ago. The palace was in chaos. Jake stood in the command room, surrounded by Varelian generals and advisors. The holographic map of space showed the enemy ships closing in, their dark shapes blotting the stars. Ravessa entered, her face serious but calm. Despite her injury, she carried herself with the grace of a born leader. The exoglove Jake had made moved her fingers easily, giving her a glimpse of the strength she once had. "We must prepare," she said. "This is not just an attack. It is a test of Varelia and of us." Jake looked at her. "What can I do?" Stay with me, she replied. Help me lead. The palace gates were closed, and all citizens were told to stay indoors. Soldiers rushed to defend the city walls. Jake helped in any way he could, fixing communication devices, repairing damaged drones, and offering ideas from his experience with human technology. One general, a stern woman named Commander Vasha, was skeptical of Jake. You're an engineer, not a warrior, she said sharply. What can you do in a battle? Jake met her eyes. Maybe I'm not a soldier, but I'm a human, and humans don't give up. Vasha nodded slowly. Good answer. We will see if it holds true. The enemy fleet fired first. Explosions lit up the sky. The palace shook. Alarms rang through the halls. Revessa stayed calm in her command chair, giving orders. Her voice was steady, guiding troops like a general from the past. Jake stayed by her side, relaying information and coordinating repairs. Suddenly, the main power grid flickered. Without power, the city's defense systems would fail. Jake raced to the power room. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew. He found damage to the main control panel. Working fast, he rewired circuits and patched broken wires. His hands moved with skill and urgency. Minutes later, the lights returned. Back in the command room, Revessa watched the battle unfold on the hologram. We are holding, she said. But we need to push back. Jake had an idea. What if we use the old defense drones? They were decommissioned years ago. Revessa raised an eyebrow. You think they still work? Jake nodded. If I can repair their control system, we can use them to attack the enemy fleet. She smiled. Then get to work, engineer. Jake spent hours repairing and reprogramming the old drones. When he activated them, dozens of small ships flew into the sky, buzzing toward the enemy like angry hornets. The enemy was caught by surprise. The drones attacked quickly and fiercely. Disabling several ships, the tide of battle shifted. Meanwhile, in the palace gardens, Revessa watched from her hover chair. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Jake approached her, breathing hard but smiling. We did it, he said. She looked at him with respect. You saved Varelia. Jake shook his head. No, we saved it, together. To victory came. At a cost. During the fight, an explosion struck near the throne chamber. Raviss's hover chair rocked violently. She cried out as a sharp pain hit her side. Jake rushed to her. Are you hurt? He asked. She nodded slowly, a wound from flying debris. Jake examined her carefully and applied a healing gel from the medkit. You should rest, he said firmly. I can't, she replied. Not now. Days passed. The enemy fleet retreated but had not been destroyed. The palace was damaged, but standing. Raviss's injury made her weaker. But Jake stayed by her side, helping her move and think. He brought her books, talked about plans, and kept her spirits high. You have changed so much since we met, she said one evening. Jake smiled. You changed me too. They sat quietly, the bond between them growing stronger. One night, Revessa looked at Jake seriously. Do you regret any of this? She asked. He thought for a moment. Not a single thing. She smiled softly. Then stay with me. Not because the law says so, but because you want to. Jake took her hand gently. I do. Outside the palace, Varelian citizens watched their leaders with new eyes. A crippled princess and a human husband who saved their home. Some still doubted, but many began to hope. Far away, the enemy empire watched to their chance to conquer Varelia was slipping away. They would come back stronger, and next time, Jake and Revessa would need to be ready. The warships had pulled away from Varelia's orbit, but the tension remained thick. The palace was quiet, but the air still buzzed with unspoken questions. What next? Jake Carter stood beside Princess Revessa in the throne room. The space was filled with soft light from crystal lamps, and the walls echoed the quiet hum of the city outside. Revessa looked at Jake with calm eyes. Stronger now than when he first met her? Do you think it will last? She asked softly. Jake smiled. What? The peace? The marriage? Us, she nodded. Jake took a deep breath. I don't know. But I do know one thing. I didn't know the rules when I married you. But I'm glad I broke them. Revessa smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. Neither did I. The elders called a council meeting. They wanted to offer Jake a choice to end the marriage legally in return. Revessa to a traditional alliance with a Varelian noble. Jake and Revessa stood before the council, calm and united. The High Elder spoke. Consort Jake Carter, you entered our laws unknowingly. We now give you the option to release Princess Revessa from this union. Jake looked at Revessa. Her eyes met his, full of trust. He shook his head. No, I choose to stay. Murmur ran through the council. Ravis's voice was steady. And I accept. The council hesitated, then nodded slowly. After the meeting, Jake and Revessa returned to the palace gardens. They sat beneath the glowing trees, the air filled with the scent of jasmine. Revessa spoke quietly. Change this palace, you changed me. Jake smiled. You changed me too? She looked at her hover chair. I never thought I would stand again. Jake reached into his bag and pulled out a small, shining device. It's a new exo-frame for your legs. I built it with the best technology from my world and yours. It will help you stand, walk, even run. Her eyes widened. You did this for me? He nodded. Not just for you, for us. The first time Revessa stood was hard. Her legs trembled. The exo-frame made soft noises as it adjusted to her movements. Jake supported her, steadying her as she took a step. Then another. The room filled with quiet cheers from the palace, staff watching nearby. Revessa smiled through tears. I feel alive. Jake grinned. You always were. Days turned into weeks. Revessa trained with the exo-frame. It's growing stronger every day. She and Jake worked together to rebuild the palace and prepare for new challenges. Together, they led Varelia into a new age, one where strength was measured by heart and mind, not just power or tradition. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Jake and Revessa stood on the palace balcony. The stars twinkled above, endless and full of promise. Revessa looked at Jake and said, We were mistakes too many, but together, we are unstoppable. Jake laughed softly. Best mistake ever. They clasped hands, ready to face the future side by side. Far away, the broken empire watched and waited, but this time, Varelia was not alone. Humans and Varelians stood. Together, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. Because sometimes, breaking the rules can change the universe.